At exactly 3:47 p.m., the brakes hissed on a packed city bus. A single dad, soaked from the rain, handed his crying baby to the stranger beside him with trembling hands. "Please, just hold her for a second," he begged, sprinting toward a collapsed old man at the back. As he knelt to help, the woman looked down at the baby girl in her arms, her lips trembling, then softly kissed the baby's forehead. When he returned, out of breath and covered in blood from the stranger's head wound, she whispered, "Can I be your wife?" It wasn't supposed to rain that day. That's what the forecast said, anyway. But by early afternoon, dark clouds had swallowed the skyline, and by 3 p.m., the city was weeping. Zachary Lane, 29, single dad, mechanic, sprinted through the downpour, clutching a soaked diaper bag with one hand and his infant daughter, Ella, with the other. She'd been screaming for 20 minutes straight, and he didn't blame her. The baby's blanket was damp, her bottle had leaked into his shirt, and the last bus downtown was about to leave. He stepped onto the bus just as the doors began to close. "Sir, you can't bring all that, I paid." Zach cut off the driver, not rudely, but with a kind of exhausted finality that made the man wave him through. He shuffled to the back. Ella's cries echoed in the packed bus, drawing tired glances and a few glares. A woman about his age, late 20s, pant and shirt, damp black curls clinging to her cheeks, glanced up from her phone. Her eyes softened when she saw the child. In distress. "She okay?" she asked gently. Zach hesitated. "Honestly, no. She's hungry, cold, and hates loud noises." The woman nodded. "Sounds like me in my 20s. That made Zach chuckle, briefly. Then the bus jerked forward. He clutched the railing, trying to soothe Ella, but she wailed louder. That's when a loud thud from the back made everyone turn. An old man, gray beard, wrinkled hands had collapsed between the back row seats. People panicked, shifting in their seats, some pulling out phones, others pretending not to notice. Zach's eyes met the woman's. I have to help him," he said. His voice was low but urgent. "Can you please just hold her, just for a second?" Without hesitation, the woman held out her arms. Zach passed Ella over, kissed her damp forehead, and rushed toward the back. The old man's head was bleeding. Zach knelt beside him, instinct kicking in from the first aid training he'd taken years ago when Ella was born. "Sir, can you hear me?" The man stirred faintly, whispering something about pain and heart. Zach pulled off his own flannel overshirt, wadded it under the man's head, and turned to shout for help. "Call 911. The woman, still holding Ella, rose to her feet. "I'm a nurse," she said calmly. I was." She stepped past people frozen in their seats and knelt opposite Zach. "I'm Zach," he murmured. "Naomi," she said, without looking up. "He's going into shock. Keep talking to him." Zach did. The man's eyelids fluttered. Zach pressed his fingers to the pulse. It was there but faint. Minutes passed like hours. When paramedics finally pulled up to the next stop, the old man was alive but barely. Zach's hands were stained in his blood. He stood, suddenly aware of the silence on the bus. Everyone was watching. Naomi was still holding Ella. The baby had stopped crying. As Zach reached for his daughter, Naomi stared at him. Something flickered in her eyes, something he hadn't seen in a long time. "I'm sorry for being so forward," she said softly. "But can I be your wife?" The entire bus went silent, and Zach just stood there, holding his baby and staring at the woman who hadn't flinched once, not at the blood, not at the crying, not at the fear. The silence on the bus pressed in like a held breath. Zach blinked. Rainwater trickled from his temple down his cheek. His arms instinctively tightened around Ella. Her tiny hand now curled against his chest like a question mark. "Did you just—" he started, his voice raw. Naomi smiled, not flirtatiously, not out of nerves, but with something heavier, something bruised and honest. "I know it sounds crazy," she said, "but it wasn't a joke." She stood there calmly, Ella resting peacefully on her shoulder. "I wasn't trying to make fun of you. Her lips trembled slightly. "I saw the way you moved, the way you didn't wait for someone else to step in, and the way you gave me your daughter without thinking twice. That kind of trust." She paused, her eyes blinking hard. "That kind of love, it's rare." And I've spent the last 3 years running from everything that isn't real. The bus hissed again. Slowing. The driver glanced back. Sir, ma'am, this your stop, or you riding on? Zach cleared his throat, heart pounding in his ears. Yeah, we're getting off. He didn't wait for Naomi's answer, just motioned for her to follow. Outside, the city glistened under a dull gray sky. The sidewalk was slick with puddles. Zach adjusted the baby bag over his shoulder, took Ella back from Naomi, and turned toward the old bakery building where his friend let him crash in the upper unit since he couldn't make rent anymore. I'm sorry, Naomi said again, catching up. I really didn't mean to scare you. Zach exhaled. You didn't scare me, just caught me off guard. She walked beside him, matching his pace. Is she your only child? He nodded. Ella? Her mom left when she was 5 months old. Left, like, gone. I came home from the shop, and she was just not there. No note, no goodbye. Just an open drawer and her keys missing. Naomi's mouth parted in shock. I'm so sorry. Zach chuckled bitterly. I think Ella's got more guts than her. That kid survived 100 fevers, sleepless nights, and a dad who can't cook for crap. Naomi laughed. What's your specialty? Burnt toast, worse. Cold cereal without milk. That made her smile again. Well, I can cook, and I don't run away from crying babies. He glanced sideways at her. You said you were a nurse. She looked down. Yeah, pediatric. Quit last year. Why? My husband died. Motorcycle accident. I spiraled. I just couldn't stand seeing kids hurting anymore. Not while mine. She bit her lip. We were going to start trying for a baby the day he died. I had bought a crib. Zach didn't say anything. They walked in. Silence for a block. The rain had softened, falling like mist now. When they reached the bakery, Zach fumbled for the keys in his soaked jeans and opened the side stairway door. It's not much, he muttered. I didn't come for much, Naomi said gently. Inside, the small apartment smelled like oil, baby, powder, and microwaved ramen. A single mattress sat against the far wall with a makeshift crib beside it. Bottles lined the kitchen counter. A stack of unpaid bills lay unopened on the table. Naomi didn't flinch, didn't pity him. She stepped in, took off her damp jacket, rolled up her sleeves, and started organizing the scattered baby things like it was second nature. Don't, Zach said after a moment. Don't clean, don't fix it. You don't have to. No, I don't have to, she interrupted, turning to face him. But I want to. This place, hurry, it feels real. Zach stared at her. You really asked me to marry you. I did. You don't even know me. Naomi stepped closer. I know what pain looks like. I know what love feels like. And I know a man willing to give up his pride for a stranger is rare. That matters more than knowing your favorite color. Zach looked down at Ella. Her eyes were closed, her fist still clutching a piece of Naomi's hair. He laughed softly. It's green, by the way, my favorite color. Naomi smiled. Mine's navy blue. Outside, the storm began to fade, and inside that tiny, broken space, something new had started to grow. Not love yet, not trust yet, but maybe with chance. Asterisk. The next morning, Zach woke to the smell of eggs. Not smoke, not burnt toast. Eggs. He blinked, disoriented. The sky outside the grimy window was pale blue now, filtered through the blinds. Ella was gurgling happily beside him, arms flailing in the air. And in the kitchen, humming a faint tune, was Naomi. She'd stayed. He sat up slowly, the weight of everything he'd carried for the last 2 years still clinging to his spine like rust. Naomi stood barefoot at the stove, wearing his oversized flannel and jeans rolled at the cuffs. She looked like she belonged there, and that terrified him. I found eggs, she said, smiling. In the back of your fridge behind. Something that used to be lasagna, I think. Zach rubbed his face. You stayed the night. I did. You didn't have to. Naomi slid eggs onto a chipped plate. You didn't have to save that man on the bus either, or trust a stranger with your baby. He watched her for a long moment. Why are you really here? She set the plate down in front of him. Because I wasn't planning on waking up for a very long time. And then, your daughter grabbed my finger and held on like she knew me, like she needed me. Zach swallowed hard. I can't offer Much, I'm not asking for much. Their eyes locked, and for a moment, the world narrowed to the space between them, the weight of two broken people trying to figure out what it meant to keep breathing after life had tried to suffocate them. But peace doesn't last long. At exactly 10:43 a.m., there was a knock at the door. Zach tensed. No one knocks here. Asterisk, asterisk, another knock, this time louder. He stood up, cautiously, walked over, and cracked the door open. A woman stood there, thin, sharp-boned, expensive coat soaked with light drizzle. Her hair was pulled back to tight, her lips to red, her eyes to familiar. "Marcy," he said. Naomi stepped into the room behind him. "Oh," Marcy said coolly, eyeing Naomi. That was quick. Zach didn't move. "What do you want?" "I want to see my daughter." His heart dropped. Asterisk. Naomi took Ella into the bedroom instantly, as if reading the tension like a reflex. Marcy crossed her arms. "Look, Zach, I made mistakes. I was young, overwhelmed. I didn't know how to be a mom. But I'm here now, 2 years late." He said. His voice was cold, not angry, just numb. "You left her in a crib and disappeared. I had postpartum and therapy." He snapped. "A call, a letter." Marcy's eyes filled with practiced tears. "I got help. I'm stable. Now I have a lawyer, a job. I want to be in her life." Zach stared at her. Then, voice barely above a whisper, "No." She stepped closer. "You don't get to say no. I'm her father. I raised her. With what money? What stability?" She hissed. "You live above a bakery and eat expired eggs. Be realistic." The words were like knives. But Zach didn't flinch. "You walked away. You don't get to waltz back in because your guilt finally kicked in." Just then, Naomi reemerged. Calm, collected, but her eyes were steel. "She's asleep," she said quietly. "And I'd appreciate if you didn't shout near her." Marcy looked her up and down. "Who even are you?" Naomi's jaw clenched. "Someone who didn't run." That shut Marcy up for a second. Then she laughed bitterly. "You think this is some fairy tale? You think you're going to save him, raise my kid, be the hero?" Naomi took a step forward. "No. I just think maybe, just maybe, Ella deserves a mom who actually wants to be there for her bedtime story, not just a photo on a lawyer's phone." Marcy's face turned red. "This isn't over." And with that, she stormed off down the stairs, heels clacking like gunshots. Zach collapsed onto the couch, hands in his hair. "She's going to take her from me." Naomi sat beside him. "Not if I help you fight. I don't have money for court." "Then we build something better than court," she said. "We show everyone you're not alone anymore." Zach looked at her, eyes burning. "Why are you still here?" Naomi smiled through her own shaking breath. "Because I need this family as much as you do." And in that moment, on a couch with cracked cushions, in a room that smelled like burnt eggs and fear, they held each other like survivors of different storms finally reaching the same dry land. Asterisk, asterisk, by the end of the week, Zach was drowning in paperwork, custody threats, visitation demands, legal jargon he didn't understand. It arrived in a thick white envelope taped to the front door one rainy morning. A letter from Marcy's attorney, typed in clinical black ink. "Mother seeks shared custody of minor child Ella Lane." Zach sat on the floor, the letter shaking in his hand like a live wire. "I can't do this," he muttered. Naomi knelt beside him, placing a gentle hand on his knee. "Yes, you can. I don't even have a lawyer," he whispered. "I can't afford one. She's got an entire office full of suits, and she doesn't have you," Naomi said firmly. "And she doesn't have Ella's love." That night, Naomi cooked dinner, chicken noodle soup from scratch, and, after Ella fell asleep on Zach's chest, Naomi sat down with her laptop and opened tabs: pro bono family attorneys, legal aid, parental abandonment cases, fathers' rights groups. For hours, she dug, called people, sent emails. Zach watched her from the couch, exhausted but stunned. "You're fighting harder for us than anyone ever has," he said. Naomi looked at him. "I'm not fighting for you, Zach. I'm fighting with you. But the past always finds a way back." 3 days later, Zach stepped outside to get diapers from the corner store and returned to find Naomi frozen on the couch, her phone dangling from her fingers. "What happened?" he asked. She didn't speak right away. He sat beside her. She finally looked at him. "My mother's in town." Zach blinked. "Your mom?" Naomi nodded slowly. "She's staying at a hotel downtown. She's the reason I left Chicago. We haven't spoken in 2 years." "What happened?" Naomi stared. Ahead. "After Ryan, my husband, died, I spiraled. I wasn't eating, wasn't working. One day, my mom came to visit and told me I was a disgrace, said no man would ever want someone like me, that I was broken, useless. She tried to get power of attorney over me, tried to put me in a facility." Zach's jaw clenched. "You're none of those things." Naomi shook her head. "I ran that night, took a bus, slept in shelters, eventually found temp work and moved here." He reached for her hand. "She wants to meet," Naomi whispered. "You don't have to go." "I think I do," she said, "because if I'm going to stand beside you in court, I need to know I've faced my demons too." So that afternoon, she met her mother in a cafe near the courthouse. Zach sat outside in the car, Ella asleep. In the back seat, watching through the window as Naomi faced a ghost. Her mother was cold, tall, composed, an older version of her, with tighter skin and sharper words. Naomi didn't cry. She didn't raise her voice. She simply listened. And then when her mother called Zach just another project, Naomi stood up, took a photo of Ella from her coat pocket, placed it on the table, and said, "This little girl saved my life. And that man, he rescued me when I didn't think I was worth anything. So no, I'm not coming back. This time, I'm staying exactly where I am." She walked out into the street, straight into Zach's arms. The court hearing came 1 week later. Marcy was dressed in a pearl gray skirt suit. Her lawyer smiled like a shark. Zach wore his only clean button-down shirt. Naomi sat behind him, holding a binder of photos, receipts, and handwritten notes. Every bedtime story, every doctor visit, every tear Zach had wiped from Ella's cheek. Into long years, Marcy's lawyer spoke first. She abandoned her child. Zach said when his turn came, left her alone. "I didn't go to court back then because I was too busy feeding her, rocking her to sleep, praying she'd stop crying long enough so I could figure out what I was doing. I didn't have time for paperwork. I was trying to be enough." The judge leaned forward. "And today?" Zach turned toward Naomi, who stood, and handed him a paper. "I may not have a fancy house," he said, voice breaking, "but I built a home. And this woman behind me, she became family the moment she kissed my daughter's forehead on a bus and didn't flinch when everything else in the world had." There was silence. Marcy stood, about to speak, when Ella, squirming in Naomi's lap, whispered her first word in the courtroom, "Mommy." Naomi froze. Zach turned. So did the judge. Ella pointed a tiny finger at Naomi. "Mommy," she said. Again, Marcy turned red. The judge exhaled. "Temporary custody remains with the father. Visitation denied pending psychological review." Zach's knees gave out in relief. Outside, under a gray but clearing sky, Zach held Naomi close. "She called you, I know," Naomi whispered, tears in her eyes. "I know." 3 weeks passed. Zach's apartment no longer smelled like grease and fear. It smelled like warmth, baby lotion, home-cooked dinners, the faint vanilla scent from Naomi's shampoo that lingered in the hallway. Ella had started giggling in her sleep. She had a new pink sweater Naomi bought for her at a second-hand store downtown. She wore it like it was spun from gold. Zach had returned to working part-time at a local garage, Joe's Auto, just 3 blocks down. Joe, the owner, gave him a raise after hearing about the custody hearing. "You didn't just fix engines," Joe had said. "You built a family. Don't let anyone tell you that ain't worth paying for." Naomi, meanwhile, started nursing again, just part-time for a small pediatric clinic near the city library. Her hands were steady now. Her voice had returned. The trembling that used to hide behind her smiles was gone. But something still sat between her and Zach. Unspoken. Not distance but pause. Not fear but question. She'd said, "Can I be your wife?" on a bus that reeked of wet coats and panic. And though Zach had welcomed her into his home, fought beside her in court, kissed her forehead after Ella called her mommy, he hadn't answered. He hadn't said yes or no until the letter came. It was small, pale blue, with the seal of the county clerk's office in the corner. Inside, a form, blank spaces, a line that read, "Petition to amend birth record of minor." Zach found Naomi in the kitchen, barefoot again, reading a baby book aloud in a voice so gentle it made the refrigerator hum quieter. He held out the paper. She blinked. "What's this? I want you to be on it," he said. His voice was steady. His hands weren't. "I want Allah's birth certificate to have your name." Her lips parted, but no sound came. "I know it's not legal yet. I know it's messy, complicated. But when she says mommy, she means you. And when I see her hold your hand in the morning, I know there's no one else on earth I'd trust with her heart." He knelt. Naomi gasped. "I never answered you that day on the bus," he said, pulling a small box from his pocket, "because I thought I had nothing to offer. But now I think maybe we could build something real from all the broken parts." So, Naomi Keller. He opened the box. It wasn't a diamond. It was a silver ring made from a melted-down socket wrench, polished with the initials Z+E+ and engraved on the inside. "Will you still be my wife?" Naomi dropped to her knees, kissed him full on the mouth, and whispered against his lips, "I already am." 6 months later, the bakery downstairs had a new owner. Naomi bought it with money saved from her new job and Zach's part-time hustle. She turned it into a cafe-clinic hybrid, half for coffee and half for free weekend checkups for kids in need. Zach fixed cars behind the building now, calling his tiny shop Ella's Garage. They had a proper nursery, a second-hand stroller, a chalkboard in the living room where Ella scribbled mommy and daddy over and over again. One morning, they took a walk through the city park. An elderly man, thinner now, but very much alive, sat on a bench near the duck pond. Zach froze. Naomi did to. The man turned. It was him. "The man from the bus. You saved me," he said softly. Zach blinked. "You remember?" He smiled. "You were the only one who moved. You gave your baby away to save a stranger. And you." He looked at Naomi, held her like she was yours. She stepped forward. "She is." He nodded slowly. "Then I guess I can finally say thank you. You saved more than just one life that day." As he walked away, Zach turned to Naomi. "Funny how a bus ride changes everything." Naomi smiled, lifting Ella into her arms. "She changed everything," she whispered, pressing a kiss to the baby's temple. "She saved us." And as the wind rustled the trees, the three of them stood beneath the morning sun, not broken anymore, not abandoned, but whole, together.